Today we're in the Old Testament. We're in 2 Kings chapter 4. 2 Kings chapter 4, in just a little while, I'm going to ask you to stand if you're willing, if you're able to do that, and we're going to read that together. Have you ever been in a situation, an unprecedented situation, a predicament so fierce and unexperienced that you had no idea how to get out of it? Have you ever been thrust into a situation with no warning up front, and suddenly you're there, you have no context, you have no history, you have nothing to rewind to, and all you know is you're in something that you have never, ever experienced? When I was thinking about the message today, and I was thinking about the text, and I milled these things over weeks in advance, and I'm praying about it and thinking about the text, and how do I present this, Lord, and is this something that I can somehow be used by you to make a difference in the lives of the people that will be here in person or perhaps watching online? And I was thinking about this, and I thought about times in my life where I was in a situation where I had no idea how to get out. One of those times I got to experience with my son, Sam. Sam is our connections pastor, our youth pastor here at New Beginnings, and I'm just so proud of Sam. But in August of 2018, Sam and I drove from Northern California to San Francisco Bay Area, where we lived, ministered for 15 years. I had the great opportunity just to have a father and son getaway to drive him to Ozark Christian College in Joplin, Missouri. And so we left early in the morning, and we drove. And we drove down the coast of California and then down around LA. We made a big move to the east. And our plan that day was that we're going to switch driving so none of us get overly tired. And what we hope to do is to get just a little bit east of Albuquerque. That is a full day of driving. How many know just going through California is a long drive, and then you're going through Arizona, and then Albuquerque is the middle of a big state like New Mexico. And we thought, man, if we can at least take a big bite out of the trip and get that far. And guess what? We did. Had an amazing time, just father and son time, making memories together. So proud of him. I'm taking him to a great school who his mom and I feel so good about. And so as we knew that we were going to get a little bit east of Albuquerque, we started looking at hotels at that point, and we found that there was a little town called Moriarty, New Mexico. I don't know too many people who have ever heard of Moriarty, New Mexico. Rick Rose, who just did meditations, he was very familiar with it. He's from there. But what was interesting is as we were getting closer, as we're tired, as we're researching that exit, it seemed to be a pretty good place, a pretty good hotel, had some really, really kind of cool restaurants and things. We thought, okay, this is the perfect stop. And as we're driving there, we learned that not all of the dashboard telemetry that we like to have works. In the car that we were in, which is now Sam's car, and it's been his car for years, it showed that as we were approaching Moriarty and our exit, it showed that we had 57 miles left. Don't ever trust those things, by the way. And the reason I still can remember, even though it's been 7 years ago, is that it was 57, is because at 57, thinking we had all the gas that we needed to, and we were right there at that exit, looking forward to a good night's sleep, looking forward to getting something to eat. Guess what? Putter, 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 and we run out of gas. Literally a half a mile from our exit in the dark, nobody out there in New Mexico at that time, and literally we are there and we see our exit. We see the hotel sign, very inviting, very, very desired at that moment. We saw all the fast food restaurant signs, all glistening, all beautiful, all desired, and yet we were stuck on the side of the road. So what do? You call AAA, right? AAA was in Albuquerque. And so we said, hey, this is the situation. Hey, no problem. We'll get somebody out to you. So here we are. Sam and I were outside the car at this point. We're on the side. Occasionally, a semi-truck would pass by us. Okay, we're waiting. Nothing's happening. I called them back. They said, yeah, we're trying to get somebody to you. They have to come all the way from Albuquerque. Please, would you send somebody? We are literally looking at our hotel right now. We'll get somebody as quick as we can. We're waiting. Finally, they call me up and they say, sir, I'm so sorry. We're not going to be able to get somebody to you for the next 3 hours. Sam, who is a faithful and dedicated and humble son, said, Dad, I got a plan. We're this close, I can see it. He's got those long legs. He's a good athlete. He's always been a good athlete. He says, Dad, give me some money. He still likes it when I give him money, but he said, give me some money. And he said, I will run to a convenience store. I know there's a convenience store over that way. I will buy just a little one of those red containers. I'll put gas in it. All we need is a splash, for crying out loud, just to get to the exit. And so obviously at that point I was a little bit concerned. It's dark out here. Ain't nobody out here but us and coyotes. And I said, okay. I gave him some money and off I see my son running off into the darkness. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. This is terrible. So anyway, he's gone. I'm sitting there by the car, and occasionally, again, a semi-truck would come by. I'm waiting. And I'm trying to rationalize, why is this taking Sam so long? I thought, okay, he's really, really fast, and he probably got there really, really quick, but now he's carrying like liquid, right? And so it's taking him a little bit, or maybe he's tired, and now he's kind of lumbering, and it's going to take him a little bit longer to get back, and it's taking him forever. After a while, I see the silhouette of my son coming back towards the car, and he's got the gas in his hand, in the canister, and he's got these big eyes. I said, Sam, what happened? What's going on? He said, Dad, I got the gas, but he said, you'll never imagine what happened to me. I said, what? As he was coming up the exit, he ran down the exit, got what he needed. As he's coming up in the darkness and the exit, he's running up and runs right smack dab into the middle of a rattlesnake. And he freezes, as would most of us. So here he is in the darkness with a rattlesnake coiled right there in the road. Again, nobody out there, and he stops. What do? Unprecedented predicament. Here's where it gets really cool. A car, which was rare at that time of the night, comes barreling down that exit, goes up with its headlights, catches Sam in that situation. Here he sees this kid standing there with a snake at his feet. Most people would say, I'm gone. Whatever. Work it out. Good luck. Stinks to be you, right? Whatever. This person in this car out of nowhere stops the car, backs up with one move, Sam said, meticulously drove onto the snake and put his right front tire on the serpent's head and crushed it and yelled to Sam, run! Is that wild? Is that wild? That out of nowhere, this one car comes and it stops at just the right time. Guys, I don't believe in coincidences. I believe at just the right time, God had a person there because my son was in peril. Guys, my premise is so simple today, and I mean it from my heart, is that God can make a way in the worst of situations. God can make a way. That's why we sang Waymaker. I asked Derek, would you please just reheat Waymaker for today? Because God can make a way. God can make a way in the worst of situations. Sam and I believe that. But do you know who else believed that? A widow that we read about in 2 Kings chapter 4. And with that setup, I would love for you to stand with us and read that with us off one of the screens, or maybe a copy of Scripture that you brought with you today. 2 Kings chapter 4. We're going to be looking at the first 7 verses together. As always, let's give it good energy. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he revered the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my 2 boys as his slaves." Elisha replied to her, "How can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house?" "Your servant has nothing there at all," she said, "except a small jar of olive oil." Elisha said, "Go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each is filled, put it to one side." She left him and shut the door behind her and her sons. They brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another one." But he replied, "There is not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. She went and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left." God bless you. You may be seated. Wow, huh? What a story that one was. Let's look at it, and let's look at it quickly. Let's pull some elements of the narrative today. First, let's look at the widow's life. She is a widow, and she is a mother. First of all, she is a widow. She is the widow of a faithful prophet who somehow had died. We don't know the details, but he is no longer around. However, we know that she has 2 sons. She is a mother. We know from the text that this is a man who passed away. He was a clergyman. Elisha knew him, and that he revered the Lord. That was part of his legacy, is that he loved the Lord. He revered the Lord. He feared the Lord. So she is a widow. She is a mother. She may have had more children, but we know that she has two sons. Let's look at the widow's predicament, and it's a pretty dire one, is that she's about to lose everything. She's about to lose everything. A debt somehow has been incurred by her late husband, and now his creditor wants his money, honey. How many of you know creditors typically want their money, honey? They want their bread, Fred. They want their dough, Joe. They're going to come a-knocking if you don't pay what you said you would pay. Now, we don't know what, again, the indebtedness was, but there was a loophole, if you will, a caveat within the Hebrew law that allowed, in cases where debts could not be paid, where there would be indentured slavery or indentured servanthood. Now, you had to treat your servant very, very well. Every 7 years, they could be set free. Every 50 years, year of Jubilee stuff, they could be set free. And so there was a caveat in this. However, she doesn't have a husband. Her 2 sons are her insurance policy. Her 2 boys are her assurance. Why? That they would be able to continue, they would be able to carry on her name, they would continue in a livelihood of somehow, that she would not, hopefully, not have to resort to the most despicable, worst way, most ominous way that you would have to survive if you were a single woman back in antiquity. And so we see the widow's life, we see the widow's predicament, we catch Elisha's inquiry, how can I help you? And then he asks her a very practical question. I want you to do some inventory. I know you're upset. I would be upset too if somebody's coming to get my kids. But he asks the question, how can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house? And it's there that we catch the widow's response. Your servant has nothing there at all. And then she thinks, wait a minute, except a small jar of olive oil. The original Hebrew says that it is most likely a small canister. It is the smallest Hebrew description of what an oil vessel or oil container would be. This is not some big jug. This is not some 55-gallon barrel with a pump on the top of it. This is a small, probably a jar used with a little bit of anointing oil inside, which most likely her clergy husband would have handy for that very, very purpose, for the purpose of anointing. What's the next thing? Is we catch Elisha's unusual instruction, don't we? What does he say? Go and do something. Go around and ask your neighbors for empty jars. Do you know your neighbors? How well? Would you feel comfortable knocking on your neighbor's door and saying, give me all the jars that you have? Who are you? We've seen you check your mail a million times. Who are you? Notice what Elisha says. Don't ask for a few. Don't ask for a few. Get as many jars from your neighbors as you can, and then you go inside, shut the door behind you and your sons. But we catch the next element, which is so neat, is we catch the widow's faith and obedience. She left him, she shut the door behind her and her sons. Her sons, brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring. She kept pouring out of something small. She kept pouring. And kept pouring, and kept pouring. And then we catch next the widow's smaller dilemma. The first huge dilemma is that my kids are about to be taken from me. My smaller dilemma is when all the jars were full, she said to her son, bring me another one. He replied, there's not a jar left. And then the oil stopped. And then we catch, lastly, Elisha's final instruction to her, go sell it. Go sell the oil, pay off the debt, pay the guy off that's coming to take your boys away. Pay that off, and you and your sons, listen, you can live on what's left. There's enough there that you can sell it, and it will provide a livelihood for you. Isn't that amazing? What a beautiful example that God can make a way in the worst of situations. What are you going through right now? What are you about to go through? I think we can learn some things from this story. I think the first thing, if you're taking notes today, is that no one is immune from hardship. No one. Nobody gets that pass. Nobody gets that exemption. Nobody gets that. If you're a sin-fallen person on a sin-fallen planet and you live long enough, you are going to go through storms. As I've said, you're either in one of three places right now. You're about to go into a storm, you're in a storm, or you've come out of a storm. We are all very, very familiar with storms. No one is immune. But here's what I know about me, is that when I'm going through a personal storm in my life, I tend to look at you and think somehow you get a pass. Man, why is God picking on me? Why did he allow this in my life? Boy, this person, man, look at the way they live. And I try to serve you, Lord. Why do you? We ask all those questions. Friends, the reality is that no one is immune from hardship. Here's the second thing I want you to get, is that financial indebtedness can be a cruel slave master. It can be cruel. And guys, I get it. We live in a culture, we live in a society where we want it now. We want whatever we want. Convenience is a huge value to us. And listen, what do I have to sign? I'll sign for it. Well, how are you going to pay? I don't know how I'm going to pay for it, but how do I get it as quickly as possible? And some of us, if you live long enough, you've got a horror story. You got a story that you don't like telling. And it's a story where you, because of impulsiveness, or you without really thinking ahead, without you or I counting the cost, we find ourselves in a place of slavery, indebtedness. That's why Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 7 says that the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. What does that mean? They have power over you. They have power over you when you owe that much. Now, I know, because I live on the planet too, is that there's some times where you got to take out money, or you got to give up something to get something else. I get that. To get a mortgage or whatever. Boy, Pastor Steve was talking about never take a mortgage. No, I didn't say that, right? There's times where you have to borrow money, but be prudent about it. Ask a lot of questions about it. There's a lot of wise people that you can consult about that. For crying out loud, pray about it. And we just talked about that not too long ago in one of the sermons here. Here's a third thing I want you to catch today is, listen, just because something is wrong doesn't mean everything is wrong. Just because something's wrong doesn't mean everything is wrong. And listen, this widow was in dire straits, man. We're not minimizing. Man, when somebody's coming to get my children, are you kidding me? The panic the stress that would catalyze in me to know somebody was coming to get my kids. And so, yes, something was wrong, but everything isn't wrong. And we're all tempted to exaggerate. Hyperbole becomes a great value when storms blow up in our life. It's Chicken Little. The sky is falling. That's why I think it's important. Don't let the situation eclipse the answer. Don't let the situation eclipse the answer. Remember, he asked her, how can I help you? What do you have? And what was her answer? Your servant has nothing here at all. Well, she did, didn't she? She had something. It wasn't much, but she had something. But as we're going through a storm, when we do an inventory of what we do have, somehow that seems to somehow be eliminated. For those of you who like going to movies, this week I read that the movie Apollo 13 is 30 years old this year. Is that crazy? Is that crazy? I've told you many, many times I grew up just in love with space and space travel. Anything I could read about space, I was just absolutely all about. And I love that movie, and you know the story and all that. And I love it where we find exactly what happens, and everything is going bad, and the telemetry is all wrong, and the thing is shaking, and these guys are like looking at each other, and what did you do? No, what did you do? What's going on here? And this is totally unprecedented and unpredicted. And so all the people that are back in the mission control, they're freaking out, and they're looking, and what do you know? And I don't know anything, and I've got a blank screen or whatever. And Ed Harris, who plays Gene Kranz, the flight director, asked the question of all of them, what is working? There's got to be something working here. We got to have something that hasn't been destroyed, that somehow is still actively giving us telemetry and giving us information. There's something that's working here. And we find that Elisha does it with this widow. Now you're saying you've got nothing. I've got nothing. But wait a minute. As I think about it, I do have a little bit of oil. It's not much, but I've got something. Friends, listen, in the worst of situations, there's something that's working for you. What am I saying in my best English? It ain't all bad. It ain't all bad. And yet there's many times, as I said, where the sky is falling that we tend to exaggerate. We think everything is against us. Another principle we learn, fourthly, is that little in the hands of God is much. Little in the hands of God. To her, in her estimation, it was just a little something. But when we surrender it to God, it becomes so much more. I think about Moses' staff and how God used a stick in a way that absolutely did miraculous things in the name of the Lord. I think of 5 smooth stones, but God only needed one. And one smooth stone literally decided an entire battle and made one young shepherd boy a national hero. I think about a little boy's lunch of 5 loaves and 2 fish and how it feeds a hillside of 5,000 hungry men and not including women and children. But I think most miraculously and most profoundly is 3 nails and a crown of thorns. And what God can do with little. Don't, please, never underestimate what God can do with your little. Well, all I got is a little bit of time. Is it God's? All I got is a little bit of treasure. Are you surrendering it to God? All I've got is a little bit of a talent. Are you giving it to the Lord? See, God is not moved. God is not corralled, and God is not limited by but what you evaluate as little. God is a God who does much with little things. How about this one? A heavy personal burden requires transparency and community. This week I wrote my newsletter for August. I can't believe I'm already writing a church newsletter for August. The year is going by so quickly. But I land on this one pretty heavily and give our new ministry, Life Struggles Support Group, some shine, which they clearly deserve. But when we think about the dilemma that this widow is in, how many of you would agree with me? This was not a time for her to be prideful. This is not a time for her to say, I got this. I can handle this. I can handle this is probably one of the biggest lies that hell has ever sold the church. No, you couldn't handle it. This woman was in a predicament she could not handle. Only God himself, through the prophet, could help her in this particular. She had to deal quickly with a situation that was dire and absolutely pressing. This was not a time for her pride. Instead, this was a time for door knocking. I don't want to go bother my neighbors. I don't want the community to know that I need something. I'd rather give the impression I have it all together. I'm a self-made person. I'm self-sufficient. I don't need anything from my community. Is that what she did? Listen, those boys would be enslaved if pride won the day. She instead was transparent. And how many of you real people came to church today? How many real people know when somebody knocks on your door, maybe you don't even know them well, and says, I need every jar and vessel that you have in your house? Just like today, thousands of years ago, there had to be nosy neighbors. Come on, somebody. What do you need that for? What do you need? You need all my Tupperware? Really? You need all my Tupperware? This was not a time for pride. This was a time for transparency. And friends, breakthrough in healing happens within the context of community. There's a lot of people filled with pride who are so isolated, and somehow to save face or to somehow protect an image that they have somehow inflated, they go down in ruin when they realize that, man, I've got community here. And that's one of the reasons I love Sarah's new ministry here, is people are recognized. They're being transparent, and it's in the context of community. And I write about that in my next newsletter if you read that. Here's another thing I want you to catch from our text today, is that oftentimes God's miracles are witnessed in private obedience. It's not big community-wide things, even though, again, the neighbors had to be really interested. But notice the ones who witnessed the miracle: a widow and her two boys. A widow and her two boys. Not the whole community. Not, I'm going to leave the door wide open. Let's see the big miracle God's going to do with oil here. You know, the only ones who saw it, witnessed it firsthand? The widow and her sons. The widow and her sons. Why? Because it was a holy movement of God. Why? Because it was sacred. Another example that I love when I think about that is Cana in Galilee. I think of Jesus, who is invited to the wedding with his posse, and they're there together, and Mama makes him aware, hey man, one of the biggest faux pas that could be made at a week-long Jewish a festival or wedding is to run out of wine. And they are running out of wine. Jesus, do something. We know the story very, very well. And so he makes his little statement, and then she says to the servants, do what he tells you. How many of you know that's still good advice? That's still good advice. Do what Jesus tells you. What's he tell them to do? Go get those big jars, get those big ceremonial jars, and fill them up. Okay? Then take some out and take it to the master of the banquet. He's the guy who's on the line. He's the guy who messed up. He's the caterer who messed it up. His reputation is on the line. And guess what? They do it. They do it. Just like the widow and her sons. It's nothing absolutely cool, nothing sexy going on here. It's just take some water and dip it out, fill a jar, take some to the master of the banquet, and as they are doing that, the miracle happens. The miracle happens with the servants. That's amazing. The miracle happened, and the servants were the witnesses of it, right? The community benefited from it, but it was the servants. As a matter of fact, when the master of the banquet, he tastes it and he recognized, man, this is amazing wine. I love where it says in John 2 and verse 9, he didn't know where it came from, but listen, the servants knew. Friends, if you'll be faithful, if you'll be a servant, if you'll do what the Lord tells you, if you'll be faithful in the little stuff, guess what? You will witness. And just like those servants in John 2, you'll get to hold some miracles in your hand. We find that sometimes miracles, just like the one here in 2 Kings, happened in just a private obedience. Let me give you a few more. Is that faith and obedience unlock the breakthrough? Did you notice the degree of faith and obedience? We see that in proportion to the jars that are collected, that it is in direct proportion to the breakthrough. That when the jars run out, guess what? The oil runs out. Now, the oil is more than enough. However, the reality is, man, if she would have had more jars of oil, I think it's safe to say she'd still be pouring, man. And so the degree, the receptacle that we give to God is how much he'll pour into our life. Listen, if I just come to church on Sunday for an hour and a half, I don't talk to God during the week, I don't pray to God, I'm giving him a very small little jar. And yet we all want a breakthrough. We all want something big and magnanimous from God, and we're giving him the little jar. She gave him as many jars as she could, and guess what? Which leads into my last point, is that God is the God of more than enough. She had enough, more than enough to pay off her debts. She had more than enough to live on the rest of her life. How do you view God? Do you view God as a stingy miser? Or do you view God as a lavishing parent? Yeah, God blesses me, but he takes out an eyedropper. Too much. Where's the lavishing parent? Scripture says how great is the love the Father has lavished on us. He is a lavisher. He's the God of more than enough. And so what do you need today? What do you need? I know what I need. What do you need? Some of you are saying, we need you to stop so we can go have lunch. What do you need? More than that. What do you need? 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 If Jesus walked in, sat down beside you today, and asked the same question that Elisha asked the widow, which was a simple one, how can I help you? What would you say? Jesus said, what do you need? What's stressing you out? What's got you all in a place of upheaval? How can I help you? How would you respond? We know how the widow responded, don't we? What did she do? She simply trusted and obeyed. She simply trusted and obeyed. She simply trusted and obeyed. She didn't question it. She didn't overthink it. She didn't say, okay, Elisha, that's cool. Let me pray about it first. She didn't say, let me first help it make sense in my mind before I do it. No, she simply trusted and obeyed. And there's a word for that. Faith. Trusting and obeying. God said it, I believe it. That settles it. I don't have to overthink it. One of us in this relationship is God, and one of us ain't. And I'm just going to trust him. And even when it doesn't make sense to that 3 pounds of meat between my ears, I'm going to be obedient. I'm going to be obedient because I know he loves me. Faith. Friends, he will never disappoint your faith. God refuses to disappoint your faith. She kept pouring, and guess what, friends? We keep going. We keep going. Even in the midst of storms, even in the midst of disappointments, even in the midst of hurts, even in the unprecedented predicaments that we can find ourselves in, where we have no clue how to get out, we keep going. She kept pouring, you keep going. Don't give up, don't give in. You're too close to the blessing. God's already proven that he can make a way in the worst of situations. How do I know that? Romans 5 and verse 8. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this, is that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Before we ever got all spit shiny, clean, before we ever thought of going to a church and raising our hands, before we ever thought of answering with an holy amen, God died for us. He made a way where there was no way. I love that. How did he do that? At the cross. See, at the cross, it was the fulfillment of the first announcement of the good news. All the way back to Garden of Eden. Genesis 3 and verse 15, that the seed of a woman would crush the head of the ancient serpent of old. And it was at the cross that the serpent got his head crushed so that we could escape his deadly intent. Wait a minute. That sounds kind of familiar. God crushed the serpent for you. There's nothing you're up against that God cannot deliver you from and deliver you through. He takes a widow who's about to lose her family, her livelihood, whose future is in tremendous jeopardy. He makes her an oil baron. Go, God. Go, God. What are you going through today? What's going on in your life that's so dang bad that the God of the universe, the constellation speaker, can't make a way for you? I'm not minimizing it. I know some of the things. I read your communication cards. I know some of you are up against some pretty ominous things. I'm not minimizing that. But there's nothing so big that God cannot help you through. I pray that would stimulate your faith. There's some people I'd love to invite up at this time if you need prayer today. If you need prayer, there's Melody, and she's coming up. Did I see Rick? Rick's still here. Anyway, I'm here. Don't let that scare you off. Here's Katie. Katie loves praying with folks. Here's Sam up here, the snake warrior. He'd love to pray with you too. If you need prayer today, whatever it is, God can make a way for you, just like he did that widow a long, long time ago. Whatever you need prayer for. Maybe some of you today, you've never taken a step like our dear friend Layla did earlier. Man, I've been following the Lord a long time, but you know what? I've never been baptized. Let's do that. Let's do that. Let's make that happen for you. Let's make that a reality for you. Okay? She's been our 10th person that's gotten baptized in 2025, and you can be number 11. We can do it by 11:45 if you want. Maybe you're looking for a church. Maybe you just need somebody to remind you that God can make a way for you. Whatever it is, would you respond in faith today? Trust and obey as we stand together and we sing.